Melissa posted the announcement at 8:14 on a Thursday night, right when people were finishing dinner and scrolling with both hands free. I know the time because my phone kept lighting up on the kitchen counter while I stood there in a quiet house, holding a glass of water I never drank. The photo she chose had been taken 2 summers earlier on a rooftop downtown. She was wearing a white dress, chin tilted up, city lights behind her, one hand around a champagne glass. She cropped me out of it. Her caption was worse than I expected. "Finally free," she wrote, followed by a silver heart, a champagne emoji, and a line about choosing peace, power, and the life she deserved. Then she added, "Some people are only meant to be stepping stones." Within minutes, the comments started stacking up. Her friends called her brave, stunning, unstoppable. One of them wrote, "Glow different when the dead weight is gone." Melissa liked that one almost immediately. Then she shared it to her story with music over it, something loud and triumphant, the kind of song people use when they want strangers to believe they've won. I didn't answer the calls. My younger sister texted first, then my cousin, then 2 people from work who were trying too hard to sound casual. I turned the phone face down and looked around the kitchen. The under-cabinet lights cast a soft yellow line across the marble counters. The coffee mug Melissa had left that morning was still in the sink, lipstick stain dried along the rim like she still lived here in every practical sense, even while announcing to the world that she had escaped me. Later that night, she took it further. A friend of hers hosted drinks at some restaurant with blue velvet booths and overpriced cocktails, and Melissa made sure the photos found their way online. In one of them, she was laughing with her head thrown back, martini in hand, wearing that green satin blouse she used to save for birthdays and promotions. In another, someone had captioned the image, "To new beginnings and better upgrades." Melissa reposted that too. Upgrades. That was the word she wanted attached to the end of our marriage. By 10 o'clock, I heard from an old neighbor that she had been talking openly, saying she'd wasted years playing loyal wife to a man who never had the vision to keep up with her. She said it in front of people who had eaten at my table. People had smiled at me, shaken my hand, asked me about the yard, the business, the family. I sat down at the kitchen island and finally unlocked my phone. Her post was still there, polished and bright, gathering hearts by the second. I read every word once. Then I set the phone back down and let the house go quiet again. Melissa thought the divorce was the finish line. The truth was, by the time she made that post, the race had already been over for months. I wasn't surprised by any of it. Not the post, not the comments, not the way Melissa held her chin a little higher when she thought people were watching. By the time she started performing her freedom for an audience, I had already heard the truth in a place she never imagined I'd be listening. It happened months earlier, on a gray Wednesday evening in late November. Rain had just started tapping against the windows of her office building. When I stopped by to drop off the Navy umbrella she'd left in my car that morning. She had texted me around 5, irritated because the weather had turned and she had meetings running late. I was nearby, so I brought it over. Her floor was half empty when I got there. Most of the lights were off except for the row over reception and the glass offices near the back. I heard voices before I reached her door. Melissa's laugh came first, low and loose, the one she used when she wanted to sound intimate. I stopped when I heard my name. She was in the break area with a co-worker named Jana, both of them standing near the coffee machine. Coats still on, wine-colored scarves draped over the backs of their chairs. Melissa had one heel hooked against the leg of the counter, arms folded, smiling into her paper cup like she was telling a harmless joke. "I'm serious," she said. "Once this divorce happens, I'm not starting over. I'm upgrading." Jana laughed. "That bad?" Melissa shrugged. "Daniel is useful, stable, predictable, but that's not the same thing as being irreplaceable." I remember every detail after that with a kind of cold precision. The smell of burnt coffee, the hum of the refrigerator under the counter, the reflection of fluorescent light across the tile floor. Jana asked, "Does he know?" Melissa smiled into her cup. "Please, he still thinks routine is love. He thinks paying bills on time and grilling on Sundays means he's a great husband." Then she said the part that mattered. "When this is done, I'll walk away with a house, half the accounts, probably support 2. He'll recover. Men like him always do. But I'm not wasting the next 10 years playing grateful wife when I could actually have the life I want. There was another voice then, a man passing through, joking that she sounded ruthless. Melissa didn't even flinch. "You only get one life," she said. "I'm not staying with the starter version." I stood there with that umbrella in my hand and felt something in me go completely still. Not rage, not heartbreak, just stillness. I left without knocking. In the parking garage, I sat in my car for 10 minutes while rain streaked across the windshield in crooked silver lines. I didn't call her. I didn't confront her when she came home. I kissed her on the cheek that night, asked how the meetings went, and listened while she lied with perfect ease. That was the moment everything changed. She thought she was planning an exit. What she really did was give me time. The next morning, nothing looked different. Melissa woke up at 7:10, as usual. She stood in front of the mirror in her silk robe, adjusting her earrings, asking me if I had seen her black heels. I told her they were by the closet door. She thanked me without looking up. Routine stayed intact. That was the point. I didn't rush. I didn't react. I didn't give her a single reason to think I had heard anything that night in her office. If anything, I became more consistent, more predictable, exactly the version of me she had described. That made everything easier. The first call I made was to a man named Harris, an estate attorney I had worked with years earlier when my father passed. I scheduled a consultation under the pretense of long-term structuring. Nothing urgent, nothing emotional, just planning. We met in a quiet office with dark wood panels and a clock that ticked just loud enough to remind you time was always moving. I laid everything out in simple terms. Assets, business income, property, future exposure. I didn't mention Melissa. I didn't need to. Harris listened, then leaned back slightly and said, "You're not asking how to divide things. You're asking how to define what can't be divided." I nodded once. That was the beginning. Over the next 12 months, I made adjustments so small they were invisible if you weren't looking for them. Accounts were reorganized. Ownership structures were updated. Layers were added between me and what I had built. On paper, nothing dramatic happened. In reality, everything shifted. The consulting arm of my business was separated into its own entity. Not hidden, not secret, just repositioned. Income streams that used to flow directly now took longer routes, passing through contracts, agreements, and structures that made them look smaller, slower, less predictable. I remember one specific afternoon in early spring. Melissa and I were sitting on the patio, late sunlight cutting across the table, while she scrolled through her phone, half listening to me talk about adjusting some business paperwork. She waved her hand without looking up. "As long as it doesn't mess with our lifestyle." "It won't," I said. And it didn't. Vacation stayed the same. The house stayed the same. Dinners, birthdays, weekends, unchanged. She kept spending the way she always had, confident in the idea that everything was stable, accessible, shared. That illusion was important. By summer, the vacation property had been placed under a long-term holding structure tied to a legacy account. Again, nothing illegal, nothing hidden, just no longer simple. By fall, investment accounts had been reallocated in a way that changed their classification. Same value, different nature, different rules. Every step was documented, signed, filed, clean. I wasn't taking anything away. I was deciding where things actually belonged. At night, Melissa would sometimes lie next to me, scrolling through homes, cars, trips, talking about after the divorce like it was a guaranteed upgrade waiting for her. I would listen. Occasionally, I'd nod. She thought time was on her side. What she didn't understand was that time had already done its work. Melissa filed 3 weeks after New Year's. She didn't tell me directly. I got the notification through my attorney at 9:32 in the morning, while I was in my office, halfway through reviewing a quarterly report. Clean timing. Strategic. Calculated. That night, she came home later than usual, carrying that same controlled energy she used when she wanted to look composed. She placed her keys on the counter, poured herself a glass of wine, and finally said it like it was a formality. "I think it's better if we move forward separately. I looked at her for a moment, then nodded once. If that's what you want. She expected resistance. She didn't get it. Over the next few days, she shifted quickly. Clothes disappeared from the closet in careful sections. Personal items from the bathroom thinned out. By the end of the week, she had moved into a high-rise apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view she made sure to post online. New chapter. Fresh start. Upgrade. Her words, not mine. But what mattered more wasn't what she said publicly. It was what she said privately. Through mutual friends, through quiet conversations, through the kind of careless confidence people have when they think they've already won. She's taking the house. One of them told me over coffee, not realizing how much I already knew. Apparently her lawyer says it's straightforward. Another mentioned the accounts, savings, investments, future income. She said you're stable, so you'll rebuild. But she deserves the bigger share for everything she's put up with. Put up with. That phrase came up more than once. Then there was him. Tyler. I heard his name before I ever saw him. A real estate agent. Flashy. Always dressed like he was stepping into a photo shoot. Tailored suits, open collar. Expensive watch that caught light at every angle. The kind of man who talked about momentum and opportunity, like they were personality traits. Melissa started appearing in photos with him within weeks. Nothing explicit at first, just proximity. A hand on her back. Shared drinks. Late dinners with captions that hinted at something without confirming it. By the second month, it wasn't subtle anymore. He posted a picture of them on a balcony. City lights behind them. His arm wrapped around her waist like he had already replaced me in every way that mattered. The caption read, "Some people know when it's time to level up." Melissa commented with a single word. Finally, I saw her once in person during that time. It was at a cafe near the courthouse. She walked in wearing a cream coat, sunglasses pushed up into her hair, moving like she owned every step she took. Tyler followed a few seconds behind her, talking into his phone, barely acknowledging anyone around him. She noticed me, paused, then smiled, not warmly, not kindly, but with something sharper underneath. Satisfaction. Daniel, she said, like we were acquaintances. Melissa. Her eyes held mine for a second longer than necessary, measuring, confirming something in her own mind. I hope you're handling everything okay, she added. I nodded. I am. Tyler ended his call and stepped closer, placing his hand lightly on her back like it was already his place to stand there. Melissa didn't correct him, didn't move away. Instead, she said, "This doesn't have to be difficult if we're both reasonable." Reasonable. In her mind, that meant I would accept what she and her lawyer had already decided was hers. The house, the accounts, the future income, the life she believed she had already secured. I looked at her for a moment, then gave a small nod. "You'll get exactly what's yours," I said. She smiled, satisfied. She thought that was a promise in her favor. It was, just not in the way she believed. The first hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock. Melissa arrived early. Of course she did. I saw her before she saw me. She stood near the entrance to the courtroom, speaking with her lawyer, posture straight, chin slightly raised, dressed in a tailored white suit that was meant to signal control. Confidence. Victory before the outcome. Tyler was there too. Not inside. He wasn't part of the case, but close enough, leaning against the wall outside, scrolling his phone, occasionally looking up like he expected to be noticed. He gave me a quick glance when I walked in, measured, dismissive. I didn't acknowledge him. Inside, the room felt colder than it should have. Neutral walls, rows of wooden benches, a long table where everything would be reduced to numbers, documents, and definitions. Melissa took her seat without looking at me. Her lawyer began first. Confident tone, structured argument. He laid it out exactly the way she had been repeating to everyone for weeks. Marital home, shared investments, joint financial growth, future earning capacity. He spoke as if everything was already decided, as if the outcome was just a formality waiting for confirmation. I watched Melissa while he talked. She nodded at certain points, made small notes, completely at ease. Then it was my attorney's turn. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue emotionally. He simply opened a folder and began placing documents on the table one by one, like he had all the time in the world. Before we proceed with assumptions regarding marital assets, he said calmly, we need to clarify classification. That word shifted the air in the room. Classification. He started with the house. Melissa leaned forward slightly, already prepared to hear it listed as shared property. Instead, my attorney slid a document forward. The property in question, he continued, was transferred into a pre-existing holding structure 11 months prior to the filing date. Melissa frowned. Her lawyer leaned in, scanning the page, his expression tightening just slightly. My attorney continued, steady, precise. The transfer was executed under standard legal frameworks, properly recorded, and falls outside the definition of marital property under current statutes. Silence, not loud, but heavy. Melissa's pen stopped moving. Her lawyer flipped through the document again, slower this time. That doesn't, he started, then stopped himself, recalibrating. We'll need to review the validity of that structure. Of course, my attorney replied. We welcome that. Then came the second document, the vacation property. Same outcome, same timing, same structure. Melissa shifted in her seat now, subtle but visible. Her shoulders tightened. Her confidence didn't disappear. It cracked, just slightly. Her lawyer spoke again, sharper this time. These transfers appear strategic. My attorney didn't hesitate. They appear legal. Another pause. Then the investments. Accounts she had mentioned by name to friends. Numbers she had already spent in her mind. Reclassified. Repositioned. No longer simple. No longer accessible in the way she had assumed. I watched the moment it started to register. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Like someone slowly realizing the map they've been following isn't real. Melissa turned her head slightly, finally looking at me. Not confident now. Not satisfied. Confused. For the first time since she posted that photo. Unsure. Her lawyer leaned closer to her, whispering quickly, flipping through pages, trying to regain footing that wasn't there anymore. The judge remained neutral, unimpressed by emotion, focused only on structure, timing, legality, and everything presented was clean, documented, finished long before she ever filed. By the end of the session, nothing had exploded. There was no dramatic outburst, just a quiet, irreversible shift. Outside the courtroom, Tyler was still there. Melissa walked past him without saying anything at first. He looked at her, expecting that same confident energy. He didn't get it. What happened? He asked. She didn't answer immediately, just shook her head once, like she didn't fully understand herself. I passed them without slowing down, and for the first time since it started, she wasn't celebrating anymore. The second hearing didn't happen immediately. There were delays, reviews, requests for additional documentation. Melissa's lawyer pushed hard, trying to challenge the structures, to find gaps, inconsistencies, anything that could pull those assets back into reach. There weren't any. By the time we returned to court, the tone had changed. Melissa didn't wear white this time. She chose something darker, simpler, no statement pieces, no performance. Her posture was still controlled, but there was tension in it now, like she was holding something together instead of displaying it. Tyler wasn't there. That didn't surprise me. Inside, her lawyer came prepared for a different angle. If the physical assets are no longer accessible, he began, measured but strained, then we shift focus to income streams, ongoing earnings, business revenue. That remained subject to division. Melissa nodded slightly, like this was the part she had been waiting for. The fallback plan, the steady money, the part she believed couldn't be moved. My attorney didn't interrupt. He let the argument finish completely. Then he stood, opened another folder, and said quietly, "We've already addressed that." There was a brief pause. Melissa's lawyer frowned. "Addressed how?" "Through restructuring," he replied. And then he began. Consulting contracts, third-party agreements, deferred compensation structures, each one documented, each one dated, each one executed months before the divorce was filed. Income that used to appear direct now routed through layered obligations. Predictable revenue now categorized as variable, contingent, or externally tied. Melissa's expression changed again. Not confusion this time. Disbelief. Her lawyer flipped through the documents faster now, scanning, recalculating, trying to hold on to something that kept slipping. This reduces reported income significantly, he said, sharper now. It redefines it, my attorney corrected. Then came the part she wasn't ready for. The foundation, he added. That word hung in the air for a second. Melissa blinked. What foundation? My attorney placed the final document on the table. A registered nonprofit entity established 8 months prior, funded through redirected allocations from Mr. Hale's consulting revenue. Her head turned slowly toward me. I didn't move. Her lawyer picked up the document, scanning quickly, then slower, then again like he was hoping it would change if he read it enough times. Charitable distribution requirements, locked allocations, board oversight. He muttered under his breath. It's compliant, my attorney said calmly. Fully transparent, fully legal, and fully untouchable, the judge added, almost absent-mindedly, while reviewing the paperwork. That was the moment everything settled. Not loudly, not dramatically, just settled. Melissa leaned back in her chair, the tension finally breaking through her posture. Her hands rested in her lap now, still, like she didn't know where to place them anymore. The numbers she had built her future on were gone, not hidden, not stolen, reassigned, out of reach long before she ever tried to claim them. Her lawyer tried one last angle. This level of restructuring, this timing, it's clearly intentional. My attorney didn't argue. Of course it is, he said. Silence followed, because intent wasn't illegal. Preparation wasn't punishable. And everything had been done before she made her move. Melissa looked at me again. This time, there was no confidence left, no satisfaction, just a slow realization that the version of the future she had been celebrating never actually existed. And worse, there was nothing left to negotiate with. The shift didn't happen all at once. At first, Melissa tried to keep the narrative alive. 2 days after the second hearing, she posted again, a filtered photo from her apartment balcony. City skyline behind her, hair perfectly styled, a glass of wine in her hand. The caption was vague but intentional. Not everything is what it seems. Trust the process. People still liked it, still commented, still played their roles. But something had changed. The energy wasn't the same. Less enthusiasm. Fewer inside jokes. No more comment about winning or upgrading. Just generic support, safe, distant, careful. I heard things through the same channels she had once used to shape her story. She's being really quiet about the case now. Something didn't go how she expected. Tyler hasn't been around much lately. That last one wasn't surprising. By the end of the week, the photos with him stopped. No more dinners. No more rooftop shots. No more captions about new beginnings. He didn't delete anything. He just stopped adding to it. Like an investment he had quietly decided wasn't worth continuing. Melissa noticed. Of course she did. She tried to pull him back into the frame, commenting on his posts, tagging him in stories, creating moments that suggested continuity. He responded less each time. Short replies. Then none at all. One evening, I saw a photo someone else posted from a bar downtown. Tyler was there, laughing, arm around a different woman, looking exactly the same as he before, unchanged, untouched, already moving forward. Melissa wasn't in that photo. That was when the silence started. Her accounts didn't disappear overnight. They just slowed. Fewer posts. Long gaps. No captions. No music. The persona she had built. The confident woman who had won, who had escaped, who had upgraded, started to fade without explanation, because there was nothing left to support it. In real life, it was worse. Her circle tightened, but not in the way she expected. Friends who had once encouraged her started asking quieter questions, then fewer questions, then none at all. Invitations stopped coming. Group chats went silent when she entered. People didn't confront her. They distanced themselves. Slowly. Completely. Because confidence is easy to support when it's winning. It's much harder when it starts collapsing. I heard she tried to explain things, tried to reframe the situation, said the court process was more complicated than expected, that things were temporarily tied up, that it would work out, but explanations only work when people still believe you. And belief had already started to disappear. The apartment she had shown off so proudly became quieter too. No more late-night gatherings. No more celebrations. Just long evenings with the city lights outside and nothing happening inside. I passed her once during that time. Not planned. Just coincidence. She was walking out of a grocery store, wearing a coat that looked thrown on instead of chosen. No makeup. Hair pulled back quickly. A basket in her hand with a few small things. Nothing like the curated life she had been presenting weeks earlier. She saw me, stopped for a second. It looked like she might say something, explain, defend, rebuild the version of reality she had been losing piece by piece. But she didn't. She just looked at me, really looked this time, without performance, without control. Then she turned and walked away. No words, no scene, just distance. The kind that doesn't come from anger. The kind that comes from understanding something too late. By the time the next hearing approached, Melissa wasn't celebrating anymore. She was trying to hold on to whatever was left. By the time mediation was scheduled, Melissa looked like someone walking into a room she no longer understood. Not intimidated, just uncertain. The confidence she used to carry so effortlessly had been replaced with something quieter, controlled but fragile, like she was holding herself together out of habit, not belief. We sat across from each other at a long table in a private conference room. No courtroom this time, no audience, just attorneys, documents, and the final attempt to settle what was left. There wasn't much left. Her lawyer still tried to frame arguments, residual claims, partial access, future considerations, but every angle sounded thinner than the last, like repeating a strategy that had already failed, hoping it might work differently this time. Melissa barely spoke. She listened, watched, waited for something to shift in her favor. It didn't. About halfway through, the mediator suggested bringing in additional context regarding long-term family planning and asset intent. That's when Emma walked in. Our daughter didn't rush, didn't hesitate. She stepped into the room calmly, wearing a simple navy coat, a folder in her hands, her expression steady in a way that reminded me of myself more than Melissa. Melissa straightened immediately. "Emma, what are you doing here?" Emma didn't answer her right away. She took a seat beside the mediator, placed a folder on the table, and looked directly at me for a brief second. I gave a small nod. That was enough. Then she opened the folder. "I was asked to provide a statement," she said, her voice even, "and documentation." Melissa frowned. "Statement about what?" Emma slid the first paper across the table. "About timing," she said, "and intent." Her lawyer picked it up first, scanning quickly, then slower. Melissa leaned forward. "What is that?" Emma didn't look at her. 5 years ago," she continued, "Dad sat me down and explained that certain properties and assets were being placed into a future trust." The room went quiet, not tense, just still. Melissa blinked. "What are you talking about?" Emma finally looked at her. "Things that were never meant to be divided," she said calmly. Her lawyer flipped to the next page. Legal signatures, dates, structures, older than everything, older than the restructure Melissa had just discovered. This wasn't reaction. This was design. "Why would you do that?" Melissa asked, her voice tightening now, something sharper underneath. Emma didn't raise her voice. "Because he planned ahead," she said. Then after a pause, "and because he told me to pay attention." Melissa looked at me. For a moment, it wasn't anger. It was something closer to realization. "You knew," she said quietly. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Emma continued, steady, precise. "The properties listed here," she said, tapping the document lightly, "were transferred into a protected trust structure years ago. I'm the beneficiary. They are not part of this case." Her lawyer closed the folder slowly. There was nothing to argue, nothing to challenge, The timeline alone made it untouchable. Melissa leaned back in her chair, her composure slipping for the first time. Not dramatically, not emotionally, but visibly. Her hands tightened slightly in her lap, her breathing shallow for just a second before she forced it back under control. "You planned all of this," she said. I met her eyes. "No," I said calmly. "I finished it." The final decision didn't come with drama. No raised voices. No last-minute arguments. No emotional speeches. Just paperwork. Signed, reviewed, confirmed. Irreversible. Melissa didn't look at me when it was done. She stared at the table, at the edge of a document that no longer held anything she wanted. Her lawyer spoke quietly to her, explaining next steps, options that sounded more like formalities than solutions. There were none. When we stood up to leave, she finally glanced in my direction. Not angry, not even shocked anymore. Just empty, like she had reached the end of something she didn't believe could end this way. I left first. There was nothing else to stay for. 3 days later, she went back to the house. Not to live, just to collect a few remaining things. That's what she told her lawyer. That's what she told herself. The driveway was empty when she pulled in. No familiar cars. No sign of movement inside. The place looked exactly the same from the outside. Clean, quiet, untouched. But it wasn't hers anymore. It hadn't been for a while. She used her key. It didn't work. She tried again, slower this time, like the outcome might change if she was more careful. Nothing. That's when the door opened from the inside. A man stood there, mid-30s, relaxed posture, confusion written across his face like this was an interruption to a normal day. Behind him, a woman's voice called out, asking who it was. A child laughed somewhere deeper in the house. A different life, already in motion. "I think you have the wrong house," the man said politely. Melissa didn't answer right away. Her hand was still on the key. This is my home," she said. But even as she spoke, there was hesitation in her voice. The man shook his head slightly. "We closed last week." Closed. The word landed harder than anything that had been said in court. A young woman appeared behind him, holding a dish towel, looking curious but calm. She glanced at Melissa, then at the man, then back again, already placing her in the category of someone from before. Someone irrelevant. Melissa stepped back slowly. No argument. No scene. Because somewhere in that moment, she understood. The house had been sold through a private structure months earlier. Clean, legal, final, just like everything else. There was nothing left tied to her. Not the property. Not the future income. Not even the narrative she had built online. That part ended quietly, too. As part of the final settlement, there was a clause. No public statements. No defamatory claims. No more posts about me. About the divorce. About what she believed she had won. Every version of that story had to disappear. And it did. Her accounts went silent. Old posts deleted. Photos gone. Captions erased. Like the entire performance had never happened. That evening, I sat in my living room, a smaller space, quieter, intentional. A glass of water on the table. No notifications. No noise. Just stillness. Melissa had walked away thinking she was ending something on her terms. What she never understood was that by the time she made it public, there was nothing left for her to take. The last time I saw Melissa was at Emma's house. It was a small gathering. Nothing formal. Just family, close friends, quiet conversation. The kind of afternoon that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. Emma had invited both of us. Not together. Just without conflict. I arrived early. The house was warm, filled with the smell of something slow-cooked and familiar. Soft music played in the background. Sunlight came through the windows and long, calm lines that made everything feel settled. Emma greeted me at the door, hugged me briefly, then handed me a small bundle wrapped in a light blanket. "Your turn," she said. My grandson. I adjusted my hands carefully, supporting his head, feeling the weight of something new and steady. He blinked slowly, completely unaware of anything that happened before he existed. That was the point. Life moves forward without asking permission. I sat down near the window, holding him, listening to the quiet rhythm of conversation around me. People talking about simple things, work, travel, plans. Nothing forced, nothing performed, just real. Melissa arrived 20 minutes later. No announcement, no entrance. She stepped inside quietly, almost like she didn't want the moment to notice her. I saw her from across the room. She looked different, not in a dramatic way, just smaller, not physically, but in presence. The sharp edges she used to carry, the confidence, the control, the certainty were gone. In their place was something quieter, more careful, like every movement had to be considered now. Emma greeted her the same way she greeted me. Fair, balanced, no sides. Melissa's eyes moved through the room, taking everything in, the conversations, the calm, the life continuing without tension, without narrative, without her needing to define it. Then she saw me, sitting by the window, holding the child. She stopped, just for a second, long enough to understand what she was looking at. I didn't stand, didn't wave, just met her eyes briefly, then looked back down at the baby in my arms, adjusting the blanket slightly where it had slipped. Normal, unforced, untouched by everything that had happened. She walked further into the room, speaking quietly to Emma, to a few others, keeping her voice low, her movements controlled. No one avoided her, but no one revolved around her either. That part of her life was gone. At some point, she ended up sitting across from me, not by design, just where the space allowed. For a while, neither of us spoke. The room filled the silence for us. Then, softly, she said, "He's beautiful." I nodded once. "He is." Her eyes stayed on the child for a moment longer. There was something in that look, not envy, not regret in the dramatic sense, just recognition of something stable, something she had stepped away from, something she couldn't reach anymore. "You seem okay," she added after a pause. I considered that, then answered simply, "I am." She nodded. No follow-up, no attempt to reopen anything, because there was nothing left to reopen. After a while, Emma came over and took the baby from me, smiling, moving easily between us like none of the past tension existed in her world anymore. And, in a way, it didn't. That was a final shift. Not the court, not the assets, not the house. This, a room where life continued, without conflict, without performance, without her at the center of it. Melissa stayed for less than an hour. When she left, she didn't say goodbye to me. She didn't need to. The door closed softly behind her. No scene, no final words, just an ending that had already happened long before that moment. I stayed a little longer, talking with Emma, holding my grandson again before I left. Outside, the air was cool, quiet, steady, and as I walked to my car, there was only one clear thought left. She didn't lose everything in court. She lost at the moment she believed I wouldn't see it coming. And I never needed to prove anything after that. I just needed to finish what I had already started.